Assalamualaikum and good morning. My name is Muhammad Nazarul and I will be explaining the linear kinematics quantities. Kinematic is a geometry pattern or form of motion with respect to time. Kinematic, which describe the appearance of motion, is distinguished from kinetics, the force associated with motion. Linear kinematics involve the shape, form, pattern, and squeezing of linear movement through time, without particular reference to the force that cause or result from the motion. Kinematics span both qualitative and quantitative form of analysis. For example, qualitatively describing the kinematics of a soccer kick entails identifying the major joints action, including hip flexion, knee extension, and possibly plantar flexion at the ankle. Although most assessments of human movement are carried out qualitatively through visual observation, quantitative analysis is also sometimes appropriate. Physical therapists, for example, often measure the range of motion of an injured joint to help determine the extent to which range of motion exercise may be needed. Movement kinematics refer to as a form of or technique. To understand linear kinematic, first we need to understand motion. Movement is dependent on plane of motion. When we understand the function of each plane and the movement, then we can optimize performance and function of equipment other than our athlete or subject. We can also reduce the injury risk by observation, or it can be either observed in 2D or 3D. Velocity is still measured in unit of meter per seconds, but the product that equal to velocity involve displacement instead of distance. To show the rate of change in location, velocity used to know if there is a change in negative or positive, and this equation is considered as vector. To find velocity, it is always involved around theorem Pythagoras. Sprinter velocity, wind velocity, and the direction of it is the resultant velocity. The velocity of a sprinter on the field is the vector sum of the velocity of sprinter and the wind.
I will explain the topic of linear motion under the subtopic of acceleration. What is acceleration? We know that when a car is going faster and faster and faster, the car experiences acceleration. Therefore, we give the definition of acceleration as rate of change of velocity. The formula change of velocity v over time, or you can write it as the final velocity v minus initial velocity u over time. So, when we final velocity is greater than u, we can say that the object is accelerating, and when the final velocity is lesser than initial velocity, which means that the car goes slower and slower, and so the car is decelerating and look.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Hi, my name is Nur Susianti binti Burjui. For today, I want present about displacement and the topic of linear kinematic quantities. Displacement can be defined as the short path and are a straight line that join between the start point and the end point. In addition, the linear displacement will be in two planes known as two dimension, and it can be measured through the measuring tool, that is by using a thread only. This is the SI unit of its measurement in the meter. For example, by using a moving object such as a ball, it can be measured by moving the ball straight from point A to point B. Another example, by calculating the distance of the hypothalamus using the formula Pythagoras theorem, such as A kuasa 2 plus B kuasa 2 equal to C kuasa 2, and C is the final result for displacement. That's all from me. Thank you.
Hi, now I will continue this presentation, which is on subtopic distance. Okay, first of all, what is distance? Distance is the length from one checkpoint to another checkpoint. What is the metric system to measure distance? Okay, in this world we have a lot of metric system that we use, but the common that we use is these two, which is kilometer and meter. But we also had centimeter and millimeter. Alright, as an example, to make sure that you all know about distance, is a cyclist who from Ipoh want to travel to Taipei. So he need to cycle along for 68.5 kilometer. So the distance from Ipoh to Taipei is 68.5 kilometer. So I hope that you all can learn something new easily about this topic. That's all from me. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amira Farhana binti Amri. Let's learn about projectile motion. We have learned how to use the kinematic equation to describe the motion of an object moving horizontally like a car, as well as object moving vertically like an object falling straight down to the ground. But what if object that moving in both directions? This type of motion, if it is involved launched or thrown into the air, can be referred to the projectile motion. We can use a parabolic to represent the path of this object. The important to understand this kind of example is that the horizontal and vertical motion are independent of one another. This means we can use separate equation to discuss the motion in each direction. One equation that corresponds to the x coordinates and another corresponds to the y coordinates of the object. To drive this equation, let's discover these questions that I've provided to you so that it will help you to understand more about this topic.
Ball is thrown at an angle of 30 degrees of the horizontal. The top of the table is 1 meter above the ground with an initial velocity of 28 meter per second. What is the maximum height of the ball will reach and the time? A ball in the air. First, draw a diagram with an initial velocity and an angle. Then split the initial velocity into horizontal and vertical component. The horizontal is the Vx and vertical components is Vy. We are looking for the S displacement, vertical displacement. We already have acceleration and initial velocity and also final velocity when it reached maximum height. is equals to 0 meter per second. Since we have A, U and V, so we use an equation of V square equals to U square plus 2AS. Then solving the values. Next, we find the time and we use the equation of S equals to UT plus half AT square. So we calculate it until the positive value of time because time is always positive.